20%, 45%, 65%.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Right. I mean, when you hear numbers like that, your mind usually jumps to like something catastrophic, a failure rate for some experimental surgical procedure, maybe, or the odds of a startup crashing and burning during a major economic depression.
Oh, totally.
But today, we're looking at a reality that is honestly way more mundane, but just as ruthless. We are looking at the stark binary reality of survival in the everyday business world. And the hard truth, like the absolute baseline we are starting with today from our source materials, is basically the equivalent of a grim financial x-ray.
That's a great way to put it.
Listen to this progression because it's wild. 20% of new businesses fail during their first 2 years of opening. 45% fail during the first 5 years. 65% during the first 10 years.
Wow.
And only a mere 25% of new businesses actually make it to 15 years or more. Those are staggering, almost discouraging odds to be up against when you're, just sitting at your kitchen table with a great idea.
They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at those statistics laid out bare like that, it is a profoundly sobering reality check for anyone.
Yeah, it really is.
It completely strips away all that romanticism we usually attach to anyone who has ever daydreamed about being their own boss. You realize you are stepping into a landscape where the default outcome is, statistically speaking, failure.
Right.
It isn't an anomaly to fail.
Yeah.
It is literally the mathematical expectation.
Exactly. And that is precisely why we are doing this today. The mission of this deep dive, and we are unpacking the Greenbridge Inc. materials today, specifically their 6th episode focusing on business structure and ownership, is to equip you with what is essentially the ultimate cheat code to beat those exact statistical odds.
Yes.
We're going to examine the architectural blueprints that the surviving 25% use to stay standing while everyone else, collapses.
What's fascinating here is how it completely flips the conventional script on how we perceive entrepreneurship. Well, the prevailing cultural narrative tells us that success is purely about having a brilliant disruptive idea, right? Like, if you have the best mousetrap, the world just beats a path to your door.
Right, the whole build it and they will come myth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the premise established right from the jump in these documents is that success isn't just about the idea. The idea is almost secondary.
Wait, really? Secondary?
Yeah. Survival is about rigorous due diligence. It's about thorough, unglamorous research into your industry. It's understanding that you are making a 5 to 10 year commitment, minimum. And crucially, it is about realizing that proper legal and financial structuring absolutely must precede opening your doors.
Wow.
You have to build the container before you try to capture the lightning.
I really love that framing, building the container. It brings to mind like a structural analogy. Starting a business without this very specific legal and financial blueprint we're going to cover today is like trying to build a massive, heavy cargo ship, but, deciding to skip installing the internal bulkheads because they take too much time.
Right, and no one sees them anyway.
Exactly. You might paint the hull beautifully, you might load it up with valuable cargo, and it might even float perfectly fine in the harbor for a while.
Sure.
But the moment you hit open water and take on even a single leak, like a lawsuit, an unexpected tax bill, a bad quarter, there is nothing to contain the damage. The water rushes through the entire ship and the whole thing goes down to the bottom. It is just a matter of time.
That is the perfect way to visualize the tension here. The structural bulkheads are completely invisible to the customer walking through the front door or, buying a product on your website.
Right.
But they are the absolute only things preventing a localized problem from becoming a catastrophic total loss.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So before we get to the really exciting stuff, and we are definitely going to get to some incredible strategies for funding, manufacturing, business credit, and hunting down unclaimed grants, we have to define exactly what kind of ship we are building.
We do.
We have to identify the right container. And according to the Greenbridge framework, that process actually starts long before you ever file a single piece of paperwork with the state.
Oh, way before.
It starts in your own head with a rather intense psychological inventory.
It does. The text lays out a series of strategic prerequisites. I mean, you cannot just stumble blindly into a lasting enterprise. You have to sit down, whether for a few focused hours or a few days, and actively draft your concepts.
Right.
The very first step mandated by the source is defining a clear mission statement, a vision for your company, and a highly specific goal summary. You have to know your foundational why before you even approach the tactical what.
And the source doesn't just say, think about it. It provides a list of incredibly pointed questions you have to ask yourself during this drafting phase. It feels almost like a self-interrogation under a bright light.
It is an interrogation, and for very good reason. The questions are designed to force you to confront the cold reality of the market.
Like,
Questions like, is there an actual need in my community for this? Would this business genuinely solve a problem?
yeah, that's huge.
Because if you aren't solving a measurable problem for a specific group of people, you aren't starting a business. You are just pursuing a personal hobby out loud and asking people to fund it.
Ouch.
But true. And then you have to ask, am I passionate about this specific problem? Because passion is the primary fuel that keeps you going when you inevitably hit that 2-year or 5-year failure wall we talked about earlier.
One of the questions on that list that really jumped out at me, and honestly it felt a bit intimidating, was, could I have customers within 90 days?
Yes.
That is such a specific, tight, aggressive timeline to demand of yourself when you are still just brainstorming on a notepad. Why 90 days?
Because capital bleeds out rapidly. It is a critical metric for viability. It violently forces you out of the theoretical daydreaming phase and into the practical execution phase.
Okay, I see.
A lot of entrepreneurs suffer from analysis paralysis, right? They get stuck in the planning and perfecting phase for years, constantly tweaking a logo or a website for a product no one has ever actually bought.
Oh, I've definitely seen that happen.
Asking if you can get revenue flowing in 90 days tests the viability of your minimum viable product. If the honest answer is no, your idea might be far too complex, too capital intensive, or just too disconnected from immediate market needs to survive the startup phase.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that pairs right alongside the other heavy questions the source poses, like, am I willing to commit 5 to 10 years to this?
Yeah.
And is this a risky business or investment? And am I actually willing to take that level of risk?
So you're constantly weighing a short-term aggressive sprint for initial customers against a decade-long marathon of operational commitment.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this practical application. Let's assume you've passed the self-interrogation. You have your mission, you have your vision, you've identified a problem, and you are strapped in for the 10-year marathon.
Right, you're ready to go.
Now you need to pick the actual legal structure that works for you. You need to build the bulkheads. The source gives us a breakdown of 5 specific business entities. Let's walk through the mechanics of each of them, starting with the absolute baseline, the sole proprietor.
Yeah, so sole proprietorship is basically the default state of commerce. If you don't file anything and you just start selling, say, handmade furniture out of your garage tomorrow, the government automatically classifies you as a sole proprietor.
So it's super easy to start.
Incredibly easy because there is virtually no administrative setup required. But that ease comes at a massive, often ruinous cost. You and the business are legally indistinguishable.
Meaning there are no bulkheads whatsoever.
Exactly, 0 bulkheads. If the business is sued because someone tripped over a piece of wood in your garage, or if the business incurs massive debt for lumber that you just can't sell, your personal assets are entirely exposed. A creditor or a plaintiff's attorney doesn't just go after the business bank account. They can come after your personal checking account, your family home, your personal vehicle. There is absolutely no legal shield separating the enterprise's liabilities from your personal life.
Which sounds completely terrifying, frankly. I mean, the idea of losing my house because a side hustle went bad is exactly why people are afraid to start.
Oh, without a doubt.
Which naturally brings us to the second option, the one most people have probably heard of, the LLC, or limited liability company.
The LLC is very often the sweet spot for new business owners. It officially creates a legal barrier, a corporate veil between you, the individual, and the business entity.
The bulkhead.
Exactly. If the business goes under, defaults on a vendor payment, or faces a lawsuit, your personal assets are generally protected. That is the limited liability aspect. You only stand to lose what you have invested into the LLC itself.
And what about taxes?
Well, what makes it so popular is the tax treatment. It offers flexible taxes, meaning the IRS typically allows the profits of the LLC to pass directly through to your personal tax return.
Okay, so the business itself doesn't pay taxes.
Right. The business itself doesn't pay a corporate tax rate.
Yeah.
You just claim the profits on your personal 1040, but you retain that crucial legal shield of the entity.
But then the text steps up to the S-Corp. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused. The material highlights the S-Corp specifically for, quote, tax savings with payroll structure.
Yes.
How does that actually work mechanically? Like, how does an S-Corp save me money compared to an LLC if they both just pass profits through to me?
This is where we get into some truly sophisticated tax strategy, and the math here is vital. Let's say you have an LLC and your business is doing well. You make $100,000 in pure profit this year.
Sounds like a great year.
It is. But because it's a standard pass-through LLC, the IRS views that entire 100 grand as self-employment income.
Yeah.
You are going to get hit with the standard income tax, plus a massive self-employment tax, which covers Medicare and Social Security, and that sits at around 15.3%.
Yikes.
Yeah, that is a huge chunk of money vanishing before you even pay your standard income tax.
Right. That 15.3% hurts. It's almost like a penalty for working for yourself.
Exactly. Now, an S-Corp is an election you make with the IRS that changes how that exact same $100,000 is categorized.
Okay, I'm listening.
Instead of taking the whole amount as self-employment income, an S-Corp allows you, the owner, to act as an employee of your own company. So you are required to pay yourself a reasonable salary for the work you do.
What's a reasonable salary?
Well, let's say you determine a reasonable salary for your role is $50,000. You run that through an actual payroll system, and you pay the standard payroll taxes, including that 15.3% on just that $50,000.
Okay, but there is still $50,000 of profit left in the business account, right? What happens to that?
That is the magic of the S-Corp. That remaining $50,000 can be taken by you as an owner distribution or a dividend. And owner distributions are typically not subject to that 15.3% self-employment tax.
Wait, really?
Really. You still pay regular income tax on it, but you just legally bypass the self-employment tax on half your profit. You've saved thousands of dollars simply by routing the exact same amount of money through a different structural pipe.
That is incredible.
Now, it does require more administrative overhead. You have to set up a formal payroll system, file different tax forms, things like that. But once your profits hit a certain threshold, the tax savings far outweigh the administrative costs.
It really is a cheat code if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
Now, what about the C Corp? The text says this is for large companies or investors.
A C Corp is the heavy-duty industrial machinery of the business world. You structure as a C Corp if your ultimate goal is to take the company public on the stock market, or if you plan to take in massive amounts of venture capital from institutional investors.
Okay, so it's for the big leagues.
Exactly. Unlike an LLC or an S-Corp, a C-Corp is a completely separate taxable entity from its owners. It pays its own corporate taxes on its profits at the corporate rate.
And I always hear about the dreaded double taxation with C Corp. What does that literally look like?
Let's follow $100 of profit in a C-Corp. The corporation makes $100.
Yeah.
First, the corporation pays the corporate tax rate on that, let's say 21%. So the business pays $21 to the IRS, leaving $79.
Okay, tracking so far.
Then the corporation decides to distribute that remaining $79 to you, the owner, as a dividend. When you receive that dividend, you have to report it on your personal tax return and pay personal dividend tax on it, let's say 15%.
Oh, I see.
So you get taxed again. The same dollar was taxed at the corporate level and then again at the personal level. That is double taxation.
That sounds terrible. Why would anyone willingly choose a C Corp if an S Corp saves you money?
Because venture capitalists and massive institutional investors generally refuse to invest in anything else.
Why is that?
C Corp have incredibly clear, standardized, century-old case law regarding how different classes of stock are issued, how boards of directors function, and how equity is divided. An investor doesn't want the messy pass-through tax complications of your S-Corp affecting their massive funds. They want the clean, standardized shares of a C-Corp. You trade tax efficiency for unlimited scalability and investor appeal.
Ah, that makes perfect sense. You're building it for the investors, not just for yourself. And finally, the text briefly mentions the nonprofit, described simply as mission-driven, regulated.
Yeah, nonprofits are entirely different beasts. They exist strictly to serve a public, charitable, educational, or mutual benefit rather than to generate wealth for owners or shareholders.
So nobody owns it.
Right. In fact, there are no owners in a nonprofit. It belongs to the public, guided by a board of directors. If a nonprofit makes a profit, that surplus must be reinvested entirely back into the organization's mission.
Got it.
And because they benefit from tremendous tax-exempt status, meaning they often pay no federal income tax, they are heavily, relentlessly regulated by both state and federal governments to ensure no one is secretly enriching themselves.
So those are our bulkheads. We have the sole prop hazard, the LLC shield, the S-Corp tax hack, the C-Corp scaling machine, and the nonprofit mission.
Exactly.
Let's say a listener sitting here and decides, okay, the LLC is the perfect sweet spot for me to start. The source material reveals what I like to call a secret menu of state filing fees.
Oh, this is a great section.
It points out that you don't necessarily have to form your entity in your own state. You can establish an online-based business legal entity in any state, and you should be aware of states with low fees. For example, it lists New Mexico as having a roughly $50 filing fee, 0 annual report fees, and offering high anonymity. Kentucky is about $40, again with no annual report fees. Wyoming is a $100 formation fee, a $60 annual report, top-tier privacy, and no state income tax.
Oh, very good.
Colorado is $50 but requires annual reports.
Yeah.
And then there's Delaware, $90 to $110 to file, which is hugely popular for those investors we just talked about, but it carries a hidden $300 plus annual franchise tax.
It's an incredibly tempting, almost seductive menu. I mean, when you are a new entrepreneur trying to keep every single startup cost as low as humanly possible, looking at a $40 or $50 entry point in states like New Mexico or Kentucky feels like a massive victory.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially compared to states that might charge hundreds of dollars just to file the initial paperwork, followed by massive annual fees. And if you are running a purely digital business like an online consultancy, a dropshipping store, a graphic design firm, geography feels totally irrelevant anyway, right?
Right.
Why should state borders matter on the internet?
Exactly. I mean, if I live in Los Angeles, but I'm running an e-commerce store entirely from my laptop in my living room, why on earth would I pay California's notorious fees when New Mexico is sitting right there offering me a $50 flat fee and total anonymity?
Because of a trap that ensnares thousands of new business owners every single year.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the source material is very careful to issue a stark warning about this cheap state illusion. It explicitly states a crucial rule of thumb. It is generally recommended to form your LLC in your home state.
I have to challenge that. Why? If my customers are nationwide and my storefront is a URL, why subject myself to high local fees?
Because of the physical reality of where the human being pulling the levers is actually located. Let's build out your Los Angeles hypothetical.
Okay, let's do it.
You live in California. You decide you are going to outsmart the system. You go online, you pay $50 to the New Mexico Secretary of State, and congratulations, you own a New Mexico LLC. You feel like a genius.
I do feel pretty smart in this scenario.
But you are sitting in Los Angeles while you answer customer emails. You are fulfilling orders from a laptop in California. You are holding strategy meetings in a California coffee shop. In the eyes of the law, your business is physically operating in the state of California.
Okay, but it's a New Mexico company. The paperwork says New Mexico.
California doesn't care. California and virtually every other state has laws stating that if a business formed in another state is operating within their borders, it must register as a foreign LLC.
A foreign LLC.
Yes. They aren't just going to let you utilize their roads, their internet infrastructure, and their consumer market without taking their cut. So the California Franchise Tax Board realizes you are operating there. They send you a notice. You are now legally required to take your New Mexico LLC and register it as a foreign entity in California.
Which means paying California fees anyway.
It means paying the exact same California registration fees plus the mandatory $800 minimum annual franchise tax in California that you were trying to avoid in the first place.
Oh, man.
But it gets worse. You still have to maintain the New Mexico LLC too. So now, instead of just paying California, you have doubled your administrative burden.
You're kidding.
Not at all. You are paying fees to 2 states. You have to file reports in 2 states. You need a registered agent in 2 states. Your clever hack to save a few $100 just cost you exponentially more in compliance and fees. That is the foreign LLC trap.
That is brutal.
Unless you have a very specific high-level structural reason, like a massive real estate holding company form, your LLC, in the state where you actually live and work.
That is such a reality check. It's like trying to sneak into a movie theater through the back alley door, feeling incredibly smug about avoiding the ticket booth, only to find out the theater mandates you to buy a full-price ticket at the concession stand before you can sit down anyway. And speaking of avoiding fees, the source also calls out another very common trap for the unwary: free online legal services.
Yes, the text specifically mentions avoiding companies like LegalZoom or ZenBusiness if your goal is strict cost control.
But they advertise everywhere.
They do. If you listen to podcasts or watch YouTube, you are bombarded with ads for these services, offering a $0 formation package. But you have to understand the mechanics of what they are actually offering.
What's the catch?
That $0 is just their service fee. You are still absolutely required to pay the mandatory state filing minimums. They just pass those costs directly on to you. But more insidiously, they make their money on the back end by upselling you heavily on services you can either do yourself or just don't need immediately.
Like what?
Specifically, registered agent services, often at a massive recurring markup.
The text actually provides a massive hack to bypass all of this. It says, to keep costs at the state-mandated minimum, file directly through the state's Secretary of State website. You just cut out the middleman entirely.
That's it.
And regarding that registered agent requirement, it notes you can save between $39 and $299 annually by acting as your own registered agent, provided you have a physical address in that state.
Right. A registered agent is not a complex legal role. It is simply the person or entity designated to legally receive official correspondence like tax notices or a summons if you are sued on behalf of the business.
Okay.
The state just needs to know there is a warm body at a physical address during normal business hours who can sign for certified mail. If you are operating out of your home state and you have a physical address, you can absolutely just designate yourself.
So I just put my own name down.
Yep. It requires you to actually be available, but it completely eliminates that annual recurring fee that third-party services rely on for revenue. It is a fantastic, simple DIY hack to keep your overhead aggressively low in those first crucial months.
So we've navigated the minefield, we have poured the concrete, we've chosen our structure, likely an LLC in our home state, to avoid the foreign entity trap.
Cool.
We've gone directly to the Secretary of State website, bypassing the expensive third-party platforms.
Yeah.
We are officially structured. Now, the natural question any sane person would ask is, why go through all this trouble?
Right.
Why is this specific container so economically powerful? And this leads us to what I think is the most provocative, mind-bending claim in the entire Greenbridge document.
It is a massive paradigm shift in how you view the economy.
The source states, point blank, the tax code was made for business owners, not W-2 employees.
Yep.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit because it sounds like one of those late-night infomercial claims. Are you telling me that simply because I filed a $50 form on a government website, the entire United States tax system suddenly, magically realigns to work in my favor? Just having the entity changes the math.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and look closely at the mechanics of the tax code, the answer is fundamentally yes. The math completely changes.
Okay, prove it to me.
We need to look at the psychological and mathematical timeline of how a W-2 employee interacts with their money versus how a business owner interacts with theirs. Think about the standard W-2 job. You negotiate a salary, right?
Right.
But you never actually see that full salary. Your employer calculates your taxes, the government takes its slice directly out of your gross pay before it ever hits your pocket account, and then you get whatever net amount is left over.
Yeah, the old direct deposit reality check.
Exactly. You have to fund your entire life, your mortgage, your groceries, your car, your gas, with what is left over after the government has taken its cut. The timeline is you earn, you are taxed, you spend.
Right. It's a painful reality every time I look at the deductions on a pay stub.
Exactly. You are taxed on the gross. But a structured business operates on a completely inverted mathematical timeline.
Inverted how?
A business earns revenue. Then it spends money on whatever it needs to operate, survive, and grow. These are the business expenses the source focuses heavily on. It buys a laptop, it pays for internet, it pays for marketing, it buys supplies. Only after all of those operational expenses are deducted from the revenue is the business taxed on the remaining profit. The timeline for a business is you earn, you spend, you are taxed.
Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this. Let's use a real-world example. Let's say I need a new high-end computer for my graphic design work. It costs $2,000.
Perfect example.
As a W-2 employee, to have $2,000 in my pocket to buy that computer, I actually have to earn closer to, what, $2,800? Because I have to earn the money, pay the income tax on it, and then use the leftover post-tax money to buy the computer.
Precisely. You are buying it with post-tax dollars. It is incredibly inefficient.
But if I buy that same $2,000 computer through my graphic design LLC, the business earns $2,000 in revenue, uses that pre-tax money to buy the computer as an operational expense, and my taxable profit is reduced by $2,000.
Exactly. By spending money on things the business legitimately needs to operate, you are actively shrinking the pile of money the government can legally take a slice of.
That is wild.
The text outlines several immense benefits that stem from this inversion. You can invest under a business entity. using pre-tax strategies. You can build business credit, which allows you to leverage debt differently. You unlock wealth-building opportunities that are simply structurally locked away behind the W-2 wall.
But why? I mean, why would the government allow this? It feels like a loophole. Why would they willingly take less money from a business owner than a W-2 employee?
It isn't a loophole. It is the fundamental architecture of the system.
Wait, you
The government wants to encourage specific behaviors. They want economic growth, they want job creation, they want technological evolution, and they want active commerce. Governments themselves are notoriously bad at creating wealth. They need the private sector to do it.
I see.
Therefore, they write the tax code to serve as a massive behavioral incentive program for the people doing those things, the business owners. When you incorporate an LLC or an S-corp, you are essentially raising your hand and telling the government, I am officially participating in the system you want to encourage. I am taking on risk to generate commerce.
And they reward you for it.
Exactly. The government responds by rewarding you with advantages, deductions, and timelines not available to W-2 employees who aren't taking on that structural risk. It's a reward system, not a penalty box.
It's like finding out you've been playing a video game on the hardest, most punishing difficulty setting your entire life without realizing it, and forming the LLC is the cheat code to unlock normal mode, where the rules actually make sense.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
But understanding the massive systemic financial incentive of this structure is one thing. Actually getting it set up perfectly so you can play the game without getting disqualified is another. This requires a strict sequential execution. Which brings us to the Greenbridge Ultimate Setup Checklist.
It is a highly specific 10-point digital and physical roadmap to legitimacy. And the order of operations here is completely non-negotiable.
The source material provides a checklist that is essentially a treasure map. Let's walk through the sequence, because if you follow these steps, you are building that cargo ship with impenetrable bulkheads.
Let's do it.
The list, straight from the source, goes business name, business address, business phone number, your checkbook or cash, business email, register your business, EIN/DUNSBOII, bank account, social media, list your business, website/landing page.
It's comprehensive.
Let's break down the mechanics of these steps. First up, name and protection.
The material advises brainstorming a business name that won't get flagged by the state, but crucially, it mandates checking the USPTO, the United States Patent and Trademark Office database, to ensure that name doesn't already exist and isn't actively trademarked.
Why is this step one? Why check a federal database before I even pay my $50 to the state?
Let's look at the catastrophic hypothetical if you don't. Imagine you skip the USPTO check. You register Apex Dynamics LLC in your state. The state allows it because no one in your specific state has that name.
Okay, sounds good so far.
You spend $5,000 on branding. You buy the domain, you build a website, you operate for 3 years, and you build incredible local goodwill. Then, one Tuesday, you receive a certified cease and desist letter from a massive corporation in New York that trademarked Apex Dynamics federally 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. That would be devastating.
Yes. They own the federal right to that name in your industry. You have to instantly surrender your domain name. You have to destroy all your marketing materials. You lose all your SEO ranking on Google. You have to rebrand from scratch, completely confusing your existing customer base, or face a ruinous federal lawsuit you will absolutely lose.
Just because you didn't do a free search?
Exactly. The USPTO check is your preliminary, zero-cost defense against trademark infringement. It ensures the ground you are building on isn't already legally owned by a larger predator.
That is a terrifying scenario, but totally avoidable. Okay, so the name is clear on the USPTO. We move to location and communication. The checklist includes business address, business phone number, and business domain or email. Now, the text specifically and emphatically advises getting a virtual address if you don't have a physical brick-and-mortar retail location, rather than just defaulting to using your home address.
I have to push back here. My home address is free. A virtual address costs money every month. Why would I add a recurring expense before I've even made a dime?
It goes directly back to the concept of the corporate veil we discussed with the LLC. If you want the legal protection of separating yourself from your business, you have to behave operationally as if they are entirely separate entities.
Okay.
Using your personal home address on official business filings violently blends the two. If a plaintiff's attorney wants to prove your business is just an alter ego and not a real company so they can come after your house, the very first thing they point out to the judge is that the business is registered to your kitchen table.
Ah, so it's a structural weakness. Exactly. Plus, there's a massive safety and privacy standpoint. When you register a business with the state, that address becomes instantly searchable public record. Do you really want every disgruntled customer, aggressive debt collector, or relentless salesperson knowing exactly where you and your family sleep at night?
Definitely not.
A virtual address, which gives you a real street address at a commercial building, not just a P.O. box, provides a professional front, satisfies the legal requirement for a physical location, and maintains an impenetrable wall around your privacy.
And securing a dedicated business phone number, a custom domain, and an email like an @yourcompany.com address instead of a standard Gmail account that establishes instant credibility.
Huge credibility.
It signals to vendors and customers that you are a legitimate entity, not just someone doing this out of their basement, even if you literally are in your basement.
Yeah.
Next up on the checklist is the identification phase. This is the alphabet soup of the business world. The text lists securing a NAICS code, a free EIN from the IRS, a DUNS number, and a BOII. Let's translate this soup because I know there is deep strategy here, especially with the NAICS code.
Yeah, the NAICS code stands for the North American Industry Classification System. It is a specific 6-digit numerical code that categorizes exactly what your business does.
But why does a code matter? Can't I just describe what I do on the application?
Because human beings at banks don't read descriptions. Algorithms read codes.
Oh, interesting.
When you go to a bank for funding or a credit card, their software immediately scans your NAICS code to assess your industry's statistical risk level. Let's say you buy houses and rent them out.
Okay.
If you choose an NAICS code associated with real estate speculation or investment banking, the bank's algorithm might instantly auto-deny you or require massive collateral because historically, those industries are volatile and high risk.
Oh.
But if you choose an NAICS code for property management, the algorithm sees a stable, recurring revenue service business, and the doors to funding swing open. It is the exact same underlying business, but the code determines how the financial system categorizes your risk. You have to choose it strategically.
That is wild. A single-digit difference can mean a yes or a no from a bank algorithm. Okay, what about the EIN?
The EIN is your employer identification number. Think of this quite literally as the social security number for your business. It is issued by the IRS completely for free. It is the foundational identifier. You cannot legally open a business bank account, you cannot run payroll, and you cannot file business taxes without it.
And the DFS number.
Next is the DNS number, issued by Dun & Bradstreet. If the EIN is your tax ID, the DUNS number is your business credit ID. It is the absolute gold standard for establishing a business credit profile, which is going to be the entire focus of our next strategy section.
And finally, the BOII. This one sounds new.
It is relatively new and incredibly important not to ignore. BOII stands for Beneficial Ownership Information Report. It is a federal requirement administered by FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network.
What's the purpose of it?
Historically, you could set up anonymous shell companies in places like Wyoming or Delaware to hide illicit funds. The BOII requires you to report the actual living human beings who own or exert substantial control over the company. It's an anti-money laundering mechanism. The filing is free, but the penalties for ignoring it are severe, including massive daily fines. It is a non-negotiable compliance step.
That brings us to the absolute linchpin of the checklist. Financials, the text mandates, quote, open business bank account for income, expenses, payroll. You highlighted this briefly when we talked about the W-2 versus business owner mindset, but I want to dig into the mechanics of why mixing funds is so dangerous.
It is the single most common and most lethal mistake new entrepreneurs make. You must never, under any circumstances, use a personal checkbook, a personal credit card, or a personal bank account for business transactions once the entity is formed.
Never.
Never. Doing so is legally referred to as commingling funds, and it directly leads to piercing the corporate veil.
Let's walk through a scenario. Let's say I'm at the office supply store. I need printer ink for the business, but I forgot the business debit card. I just used my personal debit card to buy the $50 ink. No big deal, right?
It is a massive deal. Let's say a year later, your business is sued for breach of contract. The plaintiff's attorney demands to see the business financial records. They spot that $50 transaction.
Over ink.
Yes. They point it out to the judge and say, Your Honor, this owner treats the LLC's money and their personal money as the exact same pool. They buy personal groceries with a business card, and they buy business supplies with their personal card. This LLC is a fiction. It is merely an alter ego of the owner.
Oh, man.
The judge agrees. The corporate veil is pierced, your LLC protection evaporates instantly, and the plaintiff can now legally seize your personal home to settle the business debt. all over a $50 cartridge of printer ink. A dedicated, cleanly separated business bank account is structurally non-negotiable.
Wow. The bulkheads only work if the doors are completely sealed.
Exactly.
The text also highly recommends downloading a QuickBooks trial during this banking phase. It notes, quote, QuickBooks is an excellent resource for establishing a budget, tracking expenses, and balancing your monthly income. It states that understanding your expenses helps you launch successfully, and calculating startup costs helps attract investors, estimate profit, and project taxes.
Accounting software like QuickBooks fundamentally shifts you from operating on gut feelings to operating on hard data. When you are just guessing how much you spent on ads last month versus how much revenue came in, you are an amateur.
Right.
When you have software categorizing every single penny, allowing you to definitively project your startup cost, identify your exact burn rate, and estimate profit margins with precision, you stop being an amateur and you become a CEO. And as the text rightly points out, if you ever plan to ask outside investors for capital, they won't even entertain a conversation without this level of transparent financial clarity. They want to see the math, not just the dream.
Finally, the checklist covers digital presence. Digital blueprints like website and social media pages, create social media, list your business on Google. This is essentially the modern storefront. If you aren't listed on Google My Business to the modern consumer, you simply do not exist.
Absolutely true.
But what I want to ask about this entire 10-point list is the sequence. Why does the chronological order of this checklist matter so deeply? Can't I just buy my domain name tonight, set up the LLC next week, and get the bank account next month?
You cannot jump around if you want to avoid bureaucratic nightmares. The sequence is a rigid domino effect.
How so?
Well, you cannot get the business bank account without handing the teller the EIN document. You cannot get the EIN from the IRS until the state formally registers and approves the business entity. You shouldn't register the entity or spend money buying a domain name before you check the USPTO to ensure you won't be sued for using that name.
Oh, I see the chain now.
Every single step requires the physical documentation generated by the step immediately preceding it. If you try to skip ahead, you will hit administrative walls that take weeks to undo, wasting time you don't have.
Okay, so let's assume our listener has followed the Greenbridge blueprint flawlessly. The dominoes have fallen in perfect order. The entity exists on paper, the virtual address is active, the EIN is secured, the bank account is open and cleanly separated, and the website is live. The ship is built, the bulkheads are sealed.
It's ready for the water.
But, as we both know, a beautifully built ship sitting in the dry dock doesn't actually go anywhere. It needs fuel, the business needs capital, and more importantly, it needs a financial reputation independent of the owner.
Which brings us to the absolute lifeblood of scaling a company manufacturing business credit.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the strategy shifts from defensive to highly offensive. We are looking at the 30-day blueprint to an 80 Paydex score. The source introduces this specific term, the Paydex score, and sets a hard target. It says, the goal is to establish a business credit score with at least 3 to 5 active trade lines reporting. An 80 business credit score, or Paydex score, is equivalent to a 720 consumer score. Now, let's deep dive into this, because business credit is fundamentally different from personal credit, isn't it?
It is an entirely different psychological and mathematical universe. Most people are intimately familiar with personal consumer credit, right? It's measured by a FICO score ranging from 300 to 850.
Right, we all obsess over that number.
FICO is essentially a measure of how risky you are to lend to, and it heavily penalizes you for utilizing your available credit. If you have a $10,000 credit limit on a personal card and you spend $9,000 of it, your FICO score will plummet because you look desperate for cash, even if you pay it off.
Right, FICO wants you to have access to money but never actually touch it.
Exactly. But the business world operates on the Paydex score, heavily managed by Dun & Bradstreet, which ranges from 1 to 100. Paydex doesn't care if you maximize your credit lines, because businesses are supposed to use leverage to operate and grow.
So what does it care about?
The Paydex algorithm cares almost exclusively about one thing: how fast you pay your invoices. Hitting that 80 mark simply means you consistently pay your bills exactly on time. If you hit 90 or 100, it means you pay them weeks early. Hitting 80 is the critical threshold where lenders and vendors look at your business entity and say, this machine is reliable.
And the Greenbridge material doesn't just explain the theory. It provides an incredibly aggressive, highly actionable strategy to hack your way to that 80 Paydex score in just 30 days. Let's dynamically map out the mechanics of these exact steps, because the architecture here is brilliant. Steps 1 and 2 involve a platform called Nav.
Right. NAV is essentially a financial health and credit monitoring platform specifically tailored for businesses. The source instructs you to execute a two-pronged approach here. Step 1. Create a NAV profile using your primary business email and purchase their $49.99 NAV Boost plan. The text specifically notes that the cost of this plan is reported to the credit bureaus as a positive business trade line.
Just to clarify the terminology for everyone, a trade line is basically any account that shows up on a credit report, correct? A record of a transaction.
Exactly. It is documented evidence that a vendor extended you a service on credit and you fulfilled your obligation to pay for it. The more positive trade lines you have, the thicker and more reliable your credit profile becomes.
Okay, got it.
But then step 2 of the strategy is fascinating. It says to create a second completely separate NAV profile using a different email address and select the $39.99 Boost plan.
I have to push back here. Why would I pay for two separate accounts on the exact same platform doing the exact same thing? Isn't that just wasting $90 a month?
If you look at it as buying a software service, yes, it seems completely wasteful. But you aren't buying software. You are buying data points. You are buying time.
Oh, I see.
The algorithm requires volume. The text explicitly stated the goal is 3 to 5 active trade lines. By setting up 2 distinct paid services with NAV, you immediately manufacture 2 solid, positively reporting trade lines right out of the gate. You are artificially jump-starting the history. The source advises keeping that second account active for at least 3 months to solidify the reporting history, after which you can cancel it once the score is established.
Okay, so that is 2 trade lines secured right there. Step 3 takes us into the world of physical goods. The instructions are: create a business profile on Quill.com, purchase a minimum of $100 in supplies, select net 30 payment terms at checkout, and then explicitly pay it off in 14 to 30 days. Let's talk about net 30 because this is the engine of the whole strategy.
Net 30 terms are the cornerstone of the commercial credit system. When you select net 30 at checkout, the vendor, in this case Quill, which sells office supplies, is essentially shipping you the physical goods without taking your credit card information.
You just trust you.
They ship the goods and send an invoice saying you have 30 days from today to pay this balance in full. They are extending you a short-term, interest-free line of commercial credit.
And by doing this, they report that credit extension to Dun & Bradstreet. But why does the source specifically say to pay it off in 14 to 30 days? If I want to look super reliable, shouldn't I just log in and pay the invoice on day 1 the minute the supplies ship?
That is a very common mistake, and it fundamentally misunderstands how the credit algorithm processes data. If you buy the supplies and immediately pay the invoice on day 1, the transaction closes so fast that it often never gets reported as a credit event.
Wait, really?
Yeah. To the algorithm, it just looks like a cash transaction. No credit was truly extended, so no reliability was proven. You have to let the invoice age slightly. You have to demonstrate to the algorithm that your business can hold on to a debt, manage its cash flow over a couple of weeks, and then responsibly resolve the debt before the 30-day deadline. Paying between day 14 and day 28 generates the perfect data packet for the credit bureaus.
That is such a crucial mechanical detail. Step 4 is a fascinating workaround using a service called eCredible. The source says, create an eCredible account and make sure you link your business debit card to the account. This will give you credit for NAV, email accounts, domains, etc.
eCredible acts as a data bridge. Historically, the mundane operational expenses of running a business, paying for your website domain hosting, paying your monthly Google Workspace email bill, paying for your internet, never showed up on a business credit report. You got no credit for being responsible with your daily bills.
Which is super frustrating.
Right. But eCredible connects directly to your business bank account, monitors those recurring operational expenses being paid on time, and transforms those transactions into positive trade lines that they report to the credit bureaus. It is weaponizing the expenses you already have to pay to artificially inflate your credit profile.
That is incredibly efficient. It's making every dollar work twice. Step 5 mimics the Quill strategy, but uses Grainger.com. You purchase a minimum of $50 in supplies, select net 30, and again, ensure you pay it off in that 14 to 30-day window.
Grainger is a massive industrial and maintenance supply company. Like Quill, they are known in the industry as a Tier 1 vendor, meaning they are relatively easy to get approved for net 30 terms, even if your business is brand new. And they are notoriously reliable at reporting those payments to the credit bureaus. This adds your 4th or 5th solid trade line.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here. I can hear a listener thinking, wait, am I just buying random printer paper from Quill and safety goggles from Grainger that I don't even need to trick an algorithm? Isn't that burning precious startup capital?
It isn't a trick. It is a deliberate demonstration of capability. And you shouldn't buy useless items. Every business needs something. Buy your coffee pods, buy your cleaning supplies, buy your printer ink. The strategy is simply taking the money you were going to spend at a big box retail store anyway
Yeah.
and strategically routing that spending through specific vendors who offer net 30 terms and report to the bureaus.
Ah, I get it.
You are paying the exact same amount for the supplies, but you are extracting the secondary value of the data reporting.
And step 6 simply says, obey. Establish a profile. Pick the account that works best with your budget. Keep the tray line for at least 3 months, meaning maintain the discipline. Don't miss a payment.
Exactly. By methodically executing these steps, you are manufacturing the required 3 to 5 active trade lines.
So what does this all mean? We spend 30 days routing our supply purchases through Net30 accounts. We bridge our utilities with Accretable. We utilize NAV. What is the actual payoff? Why do we care so deeply about hitting this arbitrary 80 Paydex number?
The payoff is leverage. The source text lays it out clearly. Hitting that score allows you access to business credit card funding and lines of credit. When your Paydex hits 80, the invisible doors of institutional capital swing open.
Oh, wow.
You can walk into a bank or apply online and secure high-limit business credit cards. $50,000, $100,000 limits, based almost entirely on the business's merit and revenue, not your personal FICO score.
The text makes a crucial point here. Quote, business funding allows you to start a business without exhausting your capital.
That is the holy grail. You are scaling your operations, buying inventory, or funding marketing campaigns using the bank's money. Meanwhile, your personal nest egg, your family savings, remains untouched and completely protected behind that LLC bulkhead we built in the very beginning. You have separated your personal financial risk from your operational growth.
It is the ultimate form of financial leverage. But what happens if credit lines aren't enough? Or what if a listener has a vision so massive that they want to scale rapidly, but they are philosophically opposed to taking on debt? The conversation in the source material shows to exploring outside capital. This is the final piece of the puzzle: external funding.
This is where we move away from borrowing money from banking institutions and look at taking on equity partners or hunting down non-repayable capital. The text first briefly touches on the most common source: personal funds. Using your own savings or tapping into a 401k to invest in the early stages of the business.
But the source issues a very strict mechanical warning about doing this. Be sure to document your expenses and loans, and as the business grows, reimburse yourself for the costs.
This ties directly back to our conversation about commingling funds and piercing the corporate veil. If you just log into your personal bank account and electronically transfer $50,000 of your savings into the LLC checking account to buy equipment, it looks legally chaotic.
It looks like it's just your money.
Right. You have to formally draft a promissory note. You have to create a document showing that you, John Doe, the individual, are issuing a formal loan to Apex Dynamics LLC at a set interest rate. Then, when the business becomes profitable, the business writes a check to pay you back. It keeps the financial boundaries crystal clear and legally defensible.
But if you want to use outside sources so you don't expose that private capital, the source explores the complex world of investors. It says, investors are simple. They allow you access to capital in return for a percentage of ownership in your brand. They bring existing business knowledge, can assist with growth, and offer the capital they are willing to invest in you.
Simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. This raises an important question about partnership. The text warns that finding an investor with money can sometimes be easy, but finding the right investor is critical.
How so?
When you give up equity in your company, you are essentially entering into a legally binding marriage. If you bring someone in purely because their check clears, but their vision for the company violently clashes with yours, that 10-year marathon commitment we discussed at the start is going to become a waking nightmare of boardroom battles.
The sources are highly specific about the criteria that make the perfect investor. They note the investor must have deep experience and knowledge about your specific industry. They must be actively willing to help you network outside of your current reach, and they must be open to opening doors for you. It isn't just about a check. It is about leverage, mentorship, and access.
Exactly. The industry term for this is smart money versus dumb money. Dumb money just gives you cash. Smart money gives you cash, introduces you to their supply chain, gets you meetings with major distributors, and helps you navigate regulatory hurdles they've already conquered.
That's a huge difference.
If an investor doesn't bring a massive Rolodex and deep industry expertise along with their capital, they are just incredibly expensive money, and you would be much better off utilizing the Net30 and PaidX business credit strategies we just built.
But then there is the absolute holy grail of funding. The source reveals a reality that sounds almost too good to be true: grants. The text states plainly, there are millions in grants that go unclaimed yearly. Millions of dollars just sitting there, waiting to be asked for.
It is arguably the most overlooked aspect of business funding because it requires a profound amount of effort, research, and rejection tolerance. But mathematically, a grant is essentially free money.
The best kind of money.
Right. It doesn't require giving up a percentage of your ownership like an investor demands, and it doesn't require monthly interest payments like a bank line of credit. The source provides highly actionable resources to start this hunt. It lists specific, massive databases like grantwatch.com, grants.gov, and usa.gov/grants.
It also provides a strategic framework for narrowing down the search, because you don't just go to grants.gov and search the word business. That will return millions of useless results. You have to locate grants based on highly specific criteria: your exact industry, the specific funding amount you need, your city and location, minority status, and gender. You search for like $5,000 grant for female-owned agricultural tech startup in rural Illinois. The more granular and hyper-specific you get with your filters, the less competition you face.
Precisely. But the text is also brutally realistic about the mechanics of securing this money. Applying for a grant is not like applying for a credit card. It is a highly competitive, rigidly bureaucratic process.
That's a lot of paperwork.
It isn't just filling out a web form. You have to present a compelling, data-backed narrative and a rock-solid business plan that proves you will use the money exactly how the grant issuer intends. The source recommends utilizing a tool called helloskip.com for assistance with structuring these applications.
It even suggests that if you have the resources, you should locate and hire a professional grant writer. The text notes they can assist you with the proper way to write the grant, ensure the right keywords are used, and help secure the funding. Why are keywords so important here? Isn't a human reading my passionate story?
In the initial rounds, absolutely not. Just like the NAICS codes at the bank, massive grant applications are first scanned by specialized software algorithms. The grant committee might receive 10,000 applications for 50 spots.
Wow, 10,000.
Easily. The software scans your 50-page proposal looking for highly specific terminology, metric projections, and formatting that matches the grant's stated goals. If you don't use the exact right keywords, a human being might never even lay eyes on your proposal. It gets auto-rejected. A specialized grant writer understands how to navigate those algorithms and structure the narrative to survive the software call.
However, the source makes sure to temper expectations heavily here. It clearly states grants are not guaranteed to fund and could take time to secure. You cannot build your 90-day survival sprint around waiting for a government grant check to arrive in the mail. It is a long-term strategy to scale, not emergency life support for a sinking ship.
That is a vital operational distinction. Grants are high-octane fuel to pour on an already burning fire. They are not the spark to start it. You use your meticulously structured legal entity, your perfectly separated bank accounts, your aggressive 30-day PaidX credit strategy, and your own revenue to build a stable, self-sustaining fire. Then, when the grant money finally clears 6 months later, it turns that stable fire into a massive bonfire.
We have covered an absolute mountain of systemic architectural ground today. We started by looking at the brutal reality of the X-ray, the statistical fact that only a quarter of businesses survive 15 years. But then, we unpacked the Greenbridge cheat code.
We really did.
We looked at how choosing the right entity, whether the protective shield of an LLC or the tax-hacking mechanics of an S-corp, builds impenetrable bulkheads. We explored the massive paradigm shift of utilizing the tax code, understanding the math of pre-tax spending, and realizing the system is actively designed to reward business owners.
That's the biggest takeaway, I think.
We walked sequentially through the 10-point checklist, from avoiding USPTO trademark disasters to refusing to commingle funds. We mapped out the aggressive 30-day mechanical strategy using MAV, Quill, and Incredible to manufacture an 80 PaidX score and unlock institutional leverage. And finally, we explored scaling through cleanly documented personal loans, strategic smart money investors, and navigating the algorithmic maze of unclaimed grants.
It is a breathtakingly comprehensive journey from a fragile idea on a notepad to a fully funded, legally armored enterprise. And what I appreciate most about this source material is that it doesn't just leave you with abstract theory, it demands execution. It formally assigns homework to the reader, the Episode 6 Green Grid homework.
I absolutely love homework that is specifically designed to make you money and protect your house. Let's read it straight from the source. Number 1. Brainstorm a business name and write your goals and the specific purpose you will serve in your community and abroad. Number 2, determine the appropriate legal entity for your goals. Number 3, map out your exact startup costs and identify funding sources if needed. Number 4, research your virtual address and decide if you will be your own registered agent. And number 5, find your exact risk-assessed NAICS code. If you methodically execute those 5 things, you have crossed the massive psychological threshold from being a daydreamer to being an architect.
You've laid the foundation on solid bedrock, and you've built a ship that can actually survive the open water.
We've talked extensively today about how to build the legal and financial walls of your business. We focused heavily on the mechanics, the credit algorithms, the entity structures, and the tax codes. But I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you sit down to look at that green grid homework.
Let's hear it.
Ask yourself this. Now that you understand the mechanics of how to build the exact type of machine that the entire tax code is designed to favor and reward, how does this knowledge change the way you view your own daily skills, your talents, and your hobbies? If the standard W-2 path is essentially playing the economic game on the most punishing difficulty setting, and the tax code is inherently built to empower and enrich businesses, well, maybe it's time to stop thinking of yourself as just an employee waiting for a paycheck. Maybe it is time to start thinking of yourself as a highly capable enterprise, just waiting to be formally incorporated.
That is an incredibly powerful shift in perspective. When you understand the mechanics of the system, knowledge truly becomes the ultimate form of leverage.
It truly is. Well, that comprehensively wraps up today's deep dive into the legal and financial architecture of business ownership. Cheers to your continued green wealth journey. Stay connected, share this knowledge with someone trying to build their own ship, and we will catch you on the next one.